Have you ever felt like you were living, but not really present? You wake up each morning, do the right things, follow the safe path. But deep down, there's a quiet voice asking, is this the life I truly want to live? We grow up in a world that teaches us to be strong, successful, and exceptional. But rarely does it teach us how to listen to ourselves. And so the ego steps in, takes the wheel, and leads the way. But what about the soul? What about that gentle, quiet, honest part of you? The one that's been waiting patiently for you to come home? This video isn't just about ego or soul. It's a reminder that you have the right to choose again. To choose a life not meant to prove, but to be. Not to earn love, but to love yourself. Not to become someone, but to come back to who you are. Let's walk this journey together. Slowly, deeply, and truthfully. Part 1. What is the ego, and why does it control us? There's a part of you that always wants to be in control. It hates uncertainty. It hates being ignored. It can't stand the thought of being hurt. It whispers in your ear every morning. How can I be loved? How do I not fall behind? How can I avoid being left out? That is the ego. The self you think is you. But really, it's just a shell you created to survive. Broken heart, where does ego come from? Ego isn't the villain. It's the wounded child inside you. Who wasn't seen? Who was compared, dismissed, or forced to become someone else to be loved? So ego learned to pretend. To act strong. To fake wholeness. To say I'm fine when everything inside was falling apart. Ego built the image you show the world. A title. A role. A mask. And it believes, as long as others validate me, I'll be safe. Man running, how does ego control you? It makes you unable to stop. You're always proving. Always doing more, looking better, achieving higher. It makes you run. Even when you're exhausted. Even when you no longer know why you're running. It whispers. If you don't try harder, you'll be left behind. If you're not the best, you won't be loved. If you don't please everyone, you'll end up alone. And so, you keep striving. Keep wearing masks. Keep living to be seen, instead of to be understood. Pushpin, why is ego so good at controlling us? Because it taps into our deepest fears. The fear of rejection. The fear of not being enough. The fear of not belonging. And ego says, I'll help you avoid all of that. If you just follow its voice. But what's the cost? You lose your true self. You live in anxiety, performance, and the constant fear that you have to be someone else to be worthy. Waxing crescent moon, the truth is, you are not your ego. Ego is just a shell. A mask. A survival strategy. You are the soul beneath all of that. You are the quiet presence that needs no proof to be loved. Ego screams loudly. But your soul only whispers. And only when you pause. Can you hear its gentle call back home? Part 2. What is the soul, and why is it silent? If ego is the noise, then soul is the silence. It doesn't need approval. Doesn't fight for attention. Doesn't compare, prove, or chase. It just is. Soft. Still. Like a breath you forgot you were breathing. Like the quiet light of dawn, not loud, not rushed, but true. Seedling soul is the purest part of you. It's not something you have to find or become. It's something you've always been, but forgot. Because you were too busy trying to be someone else. Soul is that quiet voice in your heart. When you choose kindness over revenge. When you silently forgive even if no one sees. When your heart stirs, not because of logic, but because something just feels true. It doesn't come from the mind. It comes from truth. Bell with / why is the soul so silent? Not because it's weak. But because it doesn't need to shout to be heard. It doesn't push. Doesn't rush. Doesn't compete. You can only hear the soul. When you choose to stop. When you're tired enough to take off the mask. When you finally ask. What is actually true? Water wave, when are you living from your soul? When you do something not to impress, but because it feels right. When you turn down a big opportunity, because it doesn't align with your heart. When you choose to listen, instead of react. When you're alone, but not lonely. The soul doesn't need you to be worthy to love yourself. It loves you even when you're not healed. Even when you're still in pieces. Light bulb, the soul doesn't promise a perfect life, it promises a true one. It doesn't say, make everyone love you. It says, love yourself, deeply enough that you don't need them to do it for you. It doesn't say, win the race. It says, be honest with yourself even if it means walking away from the race. And above all, the soul doesn't demand that you be someone. It only asks that you be brave enough to come home. Wind chime, you don't need to go anywhere to find the soul, you just need to stop running from yourself. True happiness isn't about achieving everything the ego ever dreamed of. It's about letting go of every I should be. To return to the question, who am I really? Part 3, Ego versus Soul, who's driving your life? Pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. And ask yourself, where is each choice in my life coming from? From inner truth? Or from fear? From your soul? Or from the ego screaming for recognition? Briefcase, when ego is in control, you live to prove. You stay in a job that no longer makes you feel alive. Just because it's secure and makes you look valuable in other people's eyes. You hold on to a toxic relationship. Just because you fear the emptiness of being alone. You post achievements, showcase strength, wear the mask. But behind the spotlight is a soul that's never really been seen. The ego doesn't care if you're truly happy. It only cares if you're acceptable. If you're loved. If you're admired. Dizzy, when the soul leads, you live to be present. You choose work that might not be prestigious, but it feels meaningful. You walk away from a relationship even if love remains, because it no longer nourishes you. You slow down, not to fall behind, but to stay true. You don't need applause. Because you've found peace in the quiet. You don't need to always be right. Because you've learned that sometimes losing is how you keep your kindness. The soul won't take you to the highest place. It'll take you to the truest one. Some questions to ask yourself, to know who's driving. Am I doing this out of love, or fear of judgment? Am I living by my real values, or just playing a role to fit in? If no one knew I was doing this, would I still want to do it? If I had nothing to prove, how would I choose to live? The answers won't always be comfortable. But they'll be true. And truth is the beginning of freedom. Performing arts, this life is not a performance, but the ego will make you believe it is. You became successful? That's great. But, are you happy? Everyone loves you? Wonderful. But, do you love yourself? You have thousands of followers? Good for you. But does anyone truly see you beyond the mask you wear? That's what the soul keeps asking. Not to judge you, but to wake you up. Unlocked, you don't need to get rid of the ego, you just need to stop letting it drive. Ego is the tool, the soul is the driver. Ego helps you survive, soul helps you live. Ego takes you far, soul takes you where you're meant to go. The issue isn't having an ego. It's letting it decide the direction of your entire life. Part 4, How to Live from the Soul, Not the Ego. You don't have to wake up overnight. You don't need to leave everything behind to find yourself. You don't need to quit your job, move to the mountains, or become a spiritual version of yourself. Living from the soul isn't something you do. It's how you show up. It's a choice, one breath at a time, to live honestly. Every day. Candle 1. Recognize the voice of the ego. The first step is to notice it. The ego usually speaks in a fast, sharp, demanding voice. You have to do this or you'll fail. Others are ahead of you. Hurry up. If you don't prove yourself, no one will ever respect you. It speaks from fear, from lack. But here's the truth. You don't defeat the ego by fighting it. You free yourself from it by seeing it, without becoming it. Just pause. Breathe. Observe. And you'll already be standing outside of its grip. Seedling 2. Nourish the silence within. The soul doesn't shout. It whispers. And to hear it, you need to sit with yourself. In silence. No phone. No social media. No one else. Just you and your real emotions. You might meet sadness. You might meet emptiness. But don't run. Because your soul lives beneath everything you've avoided. Sitting still and listening is your first act of courage. Compass 3. Make decisions from truth, not fear. The ego chooses what's safe, impressive, and approved by others. But the soul chooses what's true. Ask yourself when you're facing a decision. If I weren't afraid of rejection, what would I choose? If I didn't have to play strong, what would I allow myself to do? If I lived from inner freedom, which path would call my name? The truth might cost you people, opportunities, or what ego calls stability. But truth is the only thing that brings you back to yourself. Revolving Hearts 4. Place your hand on your heart and choose from love. Every day, you'll face dozens of small choices. To speak up or stay silent. To forgive or to punish. To offer kindness or self-judgment. The ego chooses to fight. The soul chooses to heal. The ego wants to win. The soul wants to be real. The ego wants to be loved. The soul wants to love. Put your hand on your heart and ask. Which action brings me closer to peace? Choose that. Even if it doesn't look strong or right. Because peace is the compass of your soul. Sunrise over Mountains 5. Live a small life, but a true one. You don't have to live the most glamorous, admired, or perfect life. You just have to live a real one. Real with your pain. Real with your cracks. Real with the things that quietly move your heart. You don't need the whole world to understand. You just need to stop abandoning yourself. Sun behind small cloud, your soul doesn't love you because of anything. It loves you despite everything. Despite your mistakes. Despite your breakdowns. Despite who you used to be. The soul is still there. Still waiting. Still whispering, come home. And you can begin right now. You don't need to change the whole world. You just need to make one small choice that comes from your truth. Part 5. Choose again, choose your true life. You've lived for too long with the ego behind the wheel, where you always had to be okay. Always had to be strong. Always had to be someone. But aren't you tired? Have you ever looked back and realized you left your true self behind somewhere along the way? You're not wrong for letting the ego lead. It came from survival. It just wanted you to be loved, safe, and seen. But now, you've grown. You no longer need to prove. You just need to return. Return to the version of you that doesn't have to try so hard. Return to the soft voice within. Return to your breath, your gaze, your dreams, your quiet beliefs. No one can teach you how to live from the soul, because your soul has always known the way. You just have to be still enough to listen. Speech balloon, and if there's one thing worth remembering, it's this. You don't need to become anyone. You only need the courage to be yourself, fully. Because that's what the soul has been whispering to you all along. From the very beginning. In your smallest dreams. In the silent moments you pause in the chaos. Milky Way, your life doesn't have to be perfect to be meaningful. It just has to be true to you. You can begin again. You can choose again. Right here. Right now. Choose to live from your soul. End arrow, because in the end, people may remember you for what you did. But you will only truly live when you dare to be who you are. And if you've listened all the way to this point, maybe a part of you has always known. You can't keep living disconnected from your soul. You're tired of pretending. You're tired of running. And deep down, you just want to live for real. So remember, you don't need to change your whole life overnight. You just need to begin with one small thing from your real heart. One choice. One step. One deep breath. That's all it takes to begin your return. Sparkles, and if you ever forget, let me remind you once more. You don't need to become anyone. You just need the courage to be yourself. Day by day, moment by moment, breath by breath. Because your soul deserves to live. Not in silence, but in light. Fully. Headphone, thank you for listening. And if this video touched you, keep it close as a reminder that in a noisy world, there's still a place where you can come home to yourself.